Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to watch the video. I know when I said I was going to start making videos, I got a lot of support wanting me to do it and waiting for me to do them. This particular video is one that when it occurred, I was still praying that it would be Mike giving this testimony and not me. But obviously, we know life didn't plan it that way. So when I first met Mike, he carried a lot. I remember when something that he told me was every day when he got up and he would look at himself in the mirror, and this he did this every morning. He said he got up, looked at himself in the mirror, took a shower, got out of the shower, was starting to get ready, and he would look at himself in the mirror and he would tear himself down. And throughout the day, he would build himself back up. And that had a lot to do with, I feel looking back on it now, it had a lot to do with either guilt, childhood trauma, um, insecurities, just who he was as a person. And if you guys have not watched the video that he did, it's called Karma. That video ties into this one that I'm going to do today because I'm going to finish his story. Again, it's called Karma. So Mike really truly believed that he got cancer and was suffering for as long as he did because of all the bad that he did in life, all the hurt that he did. He even, there's a saying, he said something in the other video that if the people who don't like him, the people that he wronged, the people that he hurt, if they always thought that he got away with it, well, look at him now. He didn't get away with it. Karma finally caught up to him, and he truly believed that. And I want to say, Mike, for those of you who have not followed our journey or have, um, Mike was diagnosed with esophageal stage 4 cancer in December of 2022. His health started declining right about the time my son passed away, which was November of 2024. So he had already been fighting for 2 years at that point. I mean, continuous chemotherapies. He's had hundreds, over 100 rounds of chemotherapies. He had, I want to say, almost 30 rounds of radiation. Um, and although in the beginning he was doing really well and he was responding very well to trials and immunotherapies, um, in November of last year, I remember in October of last year, he started feeling sick again. And that around that time is when we were starting to kind of fight with he had just finished radiation treatments and they were going to give him a break and start chemotherapy. And then around that time, we started having issues with the insurance company getting authorized. And then my son passed away. Well, if you see pictures of Mike around that time, that's November of last year, Mike was really thin. That was the last time Mike rode his bike too. He rode the bike to Keegan's funeral and led a bunch of our friends that rode their bikes to the funeral. And I remember him looking at me and saying, "I'm not going to last very long. This cancer is going to kill me soon." And I remember going to an appointment and to the doctor's appointment and I would go to all of his doctor appointments where he would sit and meet with the doctors regarding scans and stuff. His chemotherapies, he was always able to go on his own because he would be there for hours. He would tell me, just go to work. If I feel sick, come and pick me up. If not, I can just drive myself home. And most of the time, he did drive himself home. But I always went to the other appointments. I remember her telling us that we're going to do these final rounds. It was more for longevity of life to give him more time, but she didn't think he had that much time. And I remember at that appointment, we made a decision. And on one of my updates, I said this. I was no longer going to focus on him recovering. I was going to focus on the moment, the now, the time that we did have together, and make as many memories and spend as much time as I possibly could. Then my son passed away, right? And when you have a trauma like that, when you have a loss like that, it's crippling. It doubles you over. You don't think, you can't think of anything other than this loss. And I remember that day when we came home from the hospital, I crawled into bed and Mike just let me just sob. And I remember the next day he tells me, "That's it. That's all you're gonna do. And if you're gonna do it, you need to be strong. Everyone's gonna be watching, and you need to be strong." And I did it, but I know why he was telling me that. I think he needed me to be strong for him, and I did. I put that on. But don't get me wrong, I had my moments. I still went in my car and cried in the shower. I cried when I was alone. I cried. I didn't want to break in front of him because he was trying to live as long as possible for me, because he didn't want me to suffer through another loss, which is why I truly believe Mike lasted as long as he did. 2 years and 4 months. So Mike died on Saturday, April 5th. The Wednesday before, he's on his last week of hospice. We're downstairs. He's on the hospice bed. At this point, I'm sleeping on the couch. And I remember he called me over and he said, "Babe, come here." And I went over there. This was earlier. And he just, we had our moment. We said our goodbyes, we said our I love yous, what he wanted from me, what he wanted me to do. And I remember at some point he even said, he thought my son was right there. Ruben, he asked for Ruben. So I remember just running up the stairs, getting my son, having him come down. And I said, "He wants to talk to you." And then I ran out and I contacted Ruben. I said, "He thinks you're here, so come." And there was a lot of goodbyes at that point. And I remember, and then he kind of would get tired and he'd go to sleep, and then I'd go back on the couch and tell him, "Okay, baby, I'm going to be right here. I'm on the couch. I'm right next to you." And I remember thinking and praying that for a miracle. I'm praying that, he's still going to make it. He's still going to recover. God is good. There's a lot of people praying. You guys were all praying for him. And I was reading my Bible. I was reading books and just constantly responding to you guys as well. Keep us in your thoughts and prayers, and praying that he would somehow, turn. And so we had moments of talking, of clarity, of, what his wishes were, what he wanted for me. And the nurses, when he was on hospice, they were basically coming every day. So as soon as he got put on hospice, they were coming every single day. And I remember this Wednesday in particular, he calls me over and says, "Babe, can you come here?" And I'm like, "Right here. I'm right here." I jump up, run to him. And he looks at me and he says, "This is taking too long. Why is this taking so long?" I remember my heart just, was so sad for him. And I was trying my best to keep it together. And I said, "God, if this is your moment, if this is my moment, please don't let him shut me down." And the reason why I said that is, through the 2 years that Mike was battling his cancer, we had friends that would try to talk to him about God. There was people that would send prayers, which he never put down any prayers. But again, if you guys watch his videos, you'll see, he would curse God. He was a self-proclaimed atheist. He would say things like, "That's all, if there was a God, why would he allow all these things to happen, even to kids who are very innocent?" For him, okay, karma got me. I'm supposed to be suffering through this. And if you guys want to know more, those other videos kind of go into detail about that. But there's this one particular video, and I know this story, and it was a story that Mike told me very early on in our relationship. And again, Mike and I were very transparent about our past. We were very honest and open about it. And so this particular story I knew about. And when he told me, "Why is this taking so long? I want to go. I don't want to do this anymore." He told me, "I love you, but I just don't want to do this anymore. I can't." And I remember praying and saying, "God, if this is my time, please don't let him shut me down." Because again, I want to say, like, maybe the week before, I had asked him, "Can I pray for you?" And he's like, "Stop. Don't do that. Don't do those. Don't talk to me about God. Don't do that. Don't do that to me." And okay, I completely would shut down and say, "Okay, okay, I just, whatever you want." So I was afraid that that was going to happen to me again. Um, he would just listen to people that would come to visit him while he was on hospice, pray for him. And I saw that he would let them pray for him, but I could see it in his eyes or his body language that he just was not having it. So I was a little scared to say what I was going to say next. Again, this happened the Wednesday. It was around noon. He passed away the following Saturday. But he said, "I'm done. Why is this taking so long?" And it was really weird that I even could understand what he was saying, because that last week that Mike was alive, it was hard to understand him. He would try to talk and it was just a lot of mumbling. He didn't have the energy to vocalize or pronounce his words anymore. But I understood this. So I said, "Baby, how do you know that maybe your trauma, your anger is not holding you hostage here? It's grounding you to earth, and it's not allowing you to go." And it brings me to this. Mike talked about this in a video, and it's called Karma. And I'll open it for you. It's a diabetes bag. It's what diabetics carry, has insulin, a pump, and all of that in there. He has everything in here still. Mike took this from somebody had hooked up, like a one night stand type of thing, thinking that this was some sort of wallet, and he took it. When he left, he opened it and realized what it was. He didn't know, he couldn't figure out how to give it back to her. And so he kept it. But it was in his mind. The next day, he tried to get a hold of her, and the girl never answered the phone until like a week later. He got a hold of her, and she's like, "Oh, he asked her, 'Where have you been? I was trying to contact you.' She's like, 'I lost my insulin. I was in the hospital.' And she's like, 'I'm a diabetic and I lost my insulin. And that's why I haven't been around.'" Mike, obviously horrible. He never told her that it was him that took it. But that happened, like, I want to say, I think he said it was like 20 years ago, over 20 years ago. And he kept it because he felt like if he threw it away, something bad would happen. So when I told him, "How do you know that your trauma, your past, your anger towards your family, towards yourself, this bag here is not grounding you to earth and it's not letting you leave?" And he's looking at me and he's listening. And I said, "Why don't you ask God for forgiveness and tell him that you're ready to go?" And I even gave him this. I said, "You don't have to say it out loud. You could say it in your head. God knows your heart. And he started crying. I said, just tell him, ask him for forgiveness. And he looked at me and he said, God, forgive me. I'm ready to go. And I looked at him and I said, you've been forgiven. So your time will come very soon. You're going to be with Keegan. Hold him for me. Wait for me. And when my time comes, you'll be waiting for me. And he just said, okay. And then he said it again. God, forgive me. I want to go. I'm ready. I remember I prayed for him. I prayed with him. And I remember he kind of just dozed off a little bit. And I sat down on the couch and I just cried. And I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know what to say with that. I didn't know. I remember just crying, and I called his dad. And I didn't call his dad because his dad always said, if you were calling me, it's because you're telling me that Mike had passed. So I had texted his dad. And I said, I have something to tell you. It's good news. It's not bad. So call me when you get a chance. So I told his dad, and his dad was ecstatic. I called my mom. My mom was crying. And I was at that point, I was just no sleep. I hadn't slept very well. The next day, the nurse came, and so the next day was Thursday. The nurse came and he told her, I'm ready. How much longer? And she kind of looked at me and she said, it's going to happen within the next 24 to 48 hours. The fact that you're even aware and asking me is very shocking to me. Your body's fighting. So I told him in front of her, I said, baby, remember we talked about this yesterday. You asked God to forgive you. And he said, yes. And I said, okay, remember, you're going to be with Keegan. Hold him for me. It's going to happen soon. Don't hold on for me anymore. I'm going to be okay. You can go. I'm going to be all right. Don't worry about me. Will's here now. My son at that point had already moved in. I said, I'm not going to be alone. Don't worry about me. You taught me well. We talked about this. And then we both cried again. And he went to sleep. I walked out with the nurse and she turned around and looked at me and she goes, thank you for telling him that, because I know that's really hard for people to do when their loved one is on hospice. And I told her about how he had asked God to forgive him. And I told her, I already know that it's going to happen soon. But there was a part of me that was praying that because he asked God for forgiveness, that I was still praying for that miracle. And I was like, okay. And I didn't say anything right away to his family or my mom. I think I told them the next day. I told them on Friday. Because that was the Thursday that the nurse saw him. And I was still praying because he asked God for forgiveness, that God would somehow say, okay, you're healed. I don't know. It was wishful thinking on my part. But by Friday, he wasn't responding to me very much. And then Saturday morning, all communication stopped, all of it. And by 2:00 that afternoon, by 1:30, he was gone on Saturday. But the reason for this is that for people who followed his journey, and a lot of you that had said, would talk to him about God and he would say, he would cut you guys off, just know that he did ask God to forgive him. He did say God to take him home, that he was ready. And this is no longer grounding him. This is no longer holding him here. And he went to be with God. So after I actually held on to this because I wanted this to be part of the testimony that I was hoping he would do, but unfortunately it's me doing the testimony for him. I will be throwing this away. I will be destroying this. I will take it to my job and destroy it there. And because this no longer holds anybody accountable. This no longer holds nothing. It has no significance anymore. My husband asked God to forgive him, and he was forgiven the moment he said it. I read him a passage out of the Bible shortly after that about the criminals, the thieves on the cross, and the one that said, Lord, will you remember me when you make it to paradise? And God told him, the fact that the fact that you're saying this, you will be with me in paradise. I know with all my heart that God and him are together, that my purpose now, if I didn't see a purpose for my life before, I see it now very much so. There is no more coincidences. I do not believe in coincidence. Everything has its purpose. It took me all these years of life to find out what my purpose is. I get all your guys' messages. I read them all. I try to reply to all of them. A man like Mike, who had so much anger, who had so much hurt, who had so much trauma, who held on to stuff like this, at the end gave his life to God. And he was saved and he was forgiven. And it was such a blessing for me to be part of that, to be there for him, to take care of him, and be a witness to that. And I remember his dad told me, it was you. It was always supposed to be you. And I remember saying, God, if this was my purpose my whole life, from us meeting to where we're at now, let me keep going. Let me keep moving forward. And wow, God is talking to me very loudly. He's talking to me very, very loudly. And I'm just letting him direct me where I'm supposed to go. So for all of you that were praying for God, for Mike for the miracle, well, the miracle wasn't ever going to be him being healed. It was his soul being healed. It was supposed to be him giving his life to God and asking for forgiveness. And it's a beautiful testimony. It is one that I had prayed that it was him that would give it, but me as his wife am proudly representing him and letting you all know that your prayers were answered, that he was saved and he is now with God. He is with my son. He is no longer suffering and he's where he's supposed to be. This was a hard one for me to do. I hung on to this one for a while. I knew this would be my first video that I wanted to do to share with you all. Mike shared his journey with you, and I'm going to continue that journey. But again, this is no longer holding anybody hostage. This no longer holds my husband hostage. It has no more relevance, and it has nothing to do with anything anymore. So that's it. Thank you guys for supporting my family, for encouraging me, for giving me prayers of support, and sharing your testimonies with me, sharing your stories with me. They inspire me, they motivate me to keep going, and I just want you to know that I hear, I watch, I listen, and I pray for you. And I want you to know that there is a peace that has fallen over me again. I felt the peace after my son passed away, and I felt it again when Mike passed away. And I know it's the peace of your prayers. I feel them. I don't know how to describe it other than it's a feeling of comfort. It's enveloping me, and I feel it every day. I'm getting better. I'm able to talk about this. I still cry. I miss him tremendously. And I will be doing other videos on the ideas that you guys all gave me. I probably will do one or two of those questions and combine them together to do one. And I have a lot of them. So you guys are very supportive and wanting to having me continue our story and kind of go from there. So that's the video for today. Thank you all for your prayers of support. This is getting thrown away and Mike is saved. Thank you.